Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you what to do when you bring a new plant home for the first time, whether it's perfectly healthy, wherever you got it doesn't really matter. Just any plant that you bring home. These are the list of things that I do basically every single time I get a new plant. Most of the time. There's obviously sometimes where I don't do these things just because I don't see a need, but the plant that I got today is this Moonlight. I don't know how to say the first bit of it, but I know it's a Scindapsus, and I got it just at the Kroger by my house. And when I got it, these leaves are supposed to be quite firm and thick. For example, it's in the same family as my Scindapsus exotica, and these leaves are very they don't bend super easy, so they're very stiff and just thick. They're a lot thicker leaves than you would normally find on a plant. So when you have a healthy one, you're supposed to have very stiff leaves, and that means that it's well watered, well taken care of, and all that sort of stuff. But when you have one like this that has very flimsy and very just the leaves curl very well, that either means its roots are rotten and there's basically no roots left, or it can mean that it's underwatered. So if it's underwatered, the soil would basically be completely dry, and this soil is sopping wet. So I'm assuming that means someone has overwatered this plant and it needs to be repotted and potentially even just propagated to save the roots and save the whole plant. There is a lot of new growth, so it doesn't look like it's going to be too bad of a job. But so what we're going to do is basically check the roots and then see what those are like, and then after that we'll move into what to do to make the plant happier and to just make sure it flourishes in our new environment. So once again, for this job, I have my massive tub that we're gonna be doing all this stuff in, and so I'm just gonna basically empty out all the soil from this plant, and then we're going to take a look at what the roots are basically. I see some roots coming out of the soil on the top, so it doesn't look like it's gonna be that bad. And there's a lot of aerial roots going into the pot itself. So there's gonna be a lot of healthy roots. I just don't see any at the bottom or anything. So it might have been potted into too big of a pot and then, not done well there. Or it could just be that it was overwatered once or twice and it needs just to dry out a bit basically. Okay, so actually, I thought that the roots might be too small for this size pot, but it looks like there's a lot of roots here. And they all look really healthy, which is great. The soil mix is a really odd mix. There's not really much of anything in there, which is weird. Usually they use just a completely normal soil mixture, but this one's just very I don't know, it's very sandy, if that makes sense. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna try to get all the soil off of these roots and kind of just separate the plant out so it's not so tangled up together. Because as you saw from, try not to make a mess while I show you again. But these roots are all very they're all just very tangled together and root bound, but at the top of the pot. So I don't know, I've never seen it just at the top. Usually if it's root bound like that, it's going all the way down to the bottom. All right, so I've actually heard about this happening to quite a few people, but some of these Costa Farms, whatever you want to call them, they've been coming out with a lot of Monstera Perus, all that sort of stuff, and a lot of them have been non-rooted cuttings. And it looks like there might be some non-rooted cuttings in here, so glad we checked that as well, because those probably would not have lived very much longer. Yeah, some of these are super short rooted cuttings, so I might stick some of these in water to just grow some longer roots so they can be a bit happier. But some of these must have had long roots, because where else would all these roots come from? And these, so the company that sells these are the ones that you see all the Raven ZZs in, the begonias and all that sort of stuff. And I actually have the cover pot here. They all come in these pots, whether it's black or white, they're all the same exact pot that it comes in. They've been coming out with a lot more rare-ish plants, not ultra rare, but just people pay a bit more for it. And so finding a Moonlight in my area has been a bit of an Easter egg hunt, because the minute someone posts hey, there's Moonlight here, everybody goes running to try to find them. So this was just a small little store that we went and stopped by at, and we weren't really looking for a Moonlight, but we found one. So bit lucky today. So far I've taken out about 4 to 5 leaves, and like 3 of them have been like this with no roots. And then 2 of them, 3 of the other ones actually. So there's about 2 with no roots, and then 3 of them have just 1 little root like that. So definitely not a whole lot of like actual big rooted pieces in this. They were probably just scrambling to get whatever they could into the pot, but there's still a lot of, I haven't even gotten to like the main mess of roots here. There's just so many. And when you do this, it's impossible not to break off some of the roots, so don't worry too much about that because those will grow back really quick. There's another little cutting with no roots on it whatsoever, so that's fun. It looks like all the roots from this is basically coming from one big long strand of, like it's one of the strands that was actually vining a bit, and it looks like that is accounting for like the majority of these roots. Let me know in the comments down below though if you've seen these in your area, if they're very common. I know places like Florida have a lot more rare kind of plants that you won't find like in other states around, just because the conditions for growing in Florida are just so much better than basically anywhere else since it's so hot and humid. But here in Texas, it's decently humid, but it's just not, I don't know, we just don't have as many plant producers, suppliers, whatever you want to call them. And there's just a shortage of good plant nurseries, I guess. So this is actually quite interesting. There's a big clump of roots here, and it's all connected to this little wet stick right here. So there's like no leaves with it, but it's like, it's rooted. So I don't know if anything's gonna grow from that. Like we'll still pot it, but like, I don't know what is going on. This is the strangest thing I've ever run into. And I don't know if this is like normal for some people because I'm still like relatively new to like all these kind of plants and stuff. But I don't know. It was a relief, I guess, to see that a lot of the roots weren't rotted. Like they're basically all healthy. There's just those leaves that actually just don't have any roots on them at all. So I guess I will just put those in water probably to make sure that roots grow on there. Because I know you can put them into the pot and like water the soil and like they'll grow roots themselves, but I've always just had more luck propagating in water. And I actually have a video coming out, or that's already come out depending on when this one's released, about propagations and how I do them, so you feel free to check that out if you want to. The other big clump of roots just came off, and it's connected to these 3 leaves right here. So that's quite a good sized cutting, I'd say, but it is just that it looks like they're propagating these and then sticking them into pots, and that's how they're selling them. So it's probably like 3 full cuttings into a pot or so, and then just whatever extra leaves they can find around, and then like a load of wet sticks for some reason. I don't know. This is so weird. So this is probably this is the second biggest section, I think, connected to roots. It's just this little vine, and then it's got all these roots on it. But that's quite healthy as well, so happy with that. And then we've just got this big section left, and it looks like there's a couple of stems down here that might be associated with some of the roots. So I guess we'll see. We're getting close though. This plant was never really on my wish list either. I know a lot of people really wanted it, and like I said, I've been traveling for it anytime that anybody mentions that they've seen them at any store. But I've always kind of wanted the dark form over like the regular form, which is this one. There's also like a dark form that just has like a lot darker leaves. But when you see it in person, it's actually quite a lot better than you see in pictures, which I don't know, I liked. And I like my Exotica, and this is just really similar. So I don't know. And I guess I'm a sucker for like those gray blue kind of colored plants. These last roots are very tangled up together. It looks like 2 cuttings are here with like their roots all tangled. But they've literally just basically swirled around each other. I think when I repot this, because I'm gonna repot this into its original soil, I think I'm gonna keep the same soil mix and see how it does in there. I might end up regretting that and might end up changing it later, because it doesn't seem like a super well draining soil, but like it might be good enough. While we're on the note of wish list plants, actually, if you guys have any plants that are on your wish list that you guys haven't been able to find anywhere, or that have just always been there since day one, put them in the comment section, because I'm kind of looking for more plants to add to my wish list, because I haven't found any lately that I'm just like, I have to have those. And it just has made plant shopping a bit harder because I feel like when you don't have something in mind that you're looking for, it's just always harder to find stuff that you actually like for some reason, which is kind of weird because you think that like if there's nothing specific, you should be able to find anything and like that works. But when you're on the hunt for something specific and like a certain plant, and that's like all you're thinking about, and that's the reason that you go plant shopping a lot of times, it makes it a lot easier to find those plants for some reason. Like it seems like they pop up a lot more. So leave your top like 5 or so wish list plants down in the bottom so I can get some ideas, because I really don't know what to be on the lookout for next. Because like I like low maintenance and like easy to care for plants. So I won't really be getting like a ton of anthuriums and stuff like that, because I feel like people always just go above and beyond for them and like get the most humid conditions and like the perfect like potting soils and all that sort of stuff. But I'm not into all that right now. Like I might be in the future, but I'm just not into all that right now. So if you have any of your favorite low maintenance plants that are not succulents, because I can't keep succulents alive, leave them down below because I would very much appreciate it. Okay, so we've got another like 3.5 leaf, because there's a leaf coming in cutting, connected to all these roots. And then this one is like a little vine with like 4.5 leaves coming in. This one is probably the most like floppy feeling, if that makes sense, but certainly fine. Oh, and we got another surprise. We've got another wet stick too, with just some roots on it. So I guess I'll plant those too. I really don't think anything's gonna come of it, but who knows, I guess. So the roots were completely fine, which like I said, shocked me because I was really expecting them to be kind of rotted down a bit. So that kind of raises the question of why the plant was struggling, because you don't want to just like, you know, take a look at the roots and be like, oh, they're completely fine, let's repot it, put it right back where it was before, because then your plant might continue to struggle because it was struggling when you got it. So what I think probably happened is the pot and the cover pot, so like the nursery pot that the plant was in and the cover pot that it was in, probably made the conditions too wet, and then that's when the roots could have started rotting, but there was no roots at the bottom, which means that the top roots probably were doing fine because they dry out like first. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So here's the pot that it was in, just like a cover pot, no drainage, and here is the nursery pot it was in. So when you put those in together, if you take a look, there is no gap around the sides at all. You kind of have to like grab the inside and then take it out like that. So when there's no gap like that, that's gonna trap all the moisture inside that pot, and any of the extra space down there is just gonna all create condensation, and that's gonna go all the way around your pot and gonna keep everything in there very, very humid and just wet all the time, and is not gonna allow it to dry out at all. Yeah, so it's not gonna allow it to dry out at all. And actually, if you look at the bottom of this pot here, you can see there is actually some like water droplets there. So that means that it actually has been way too wet. And that's actually what happened with my begonia. I'll show you that real quick. So this is my begonia, and it was in the exact same cover pot as this Moonlight was. And it's in the same exact nursery pot too. And when I got it, they only had like, I don't know, 2 leaves to each stem and then a bunch of dead leaves. And the roots were completely healthy. I looked at the roots and they were totally fine. But what the problem was it just had too much moisture and it wasn't drying out. So it was just basically dying in its pot, even though it was getting good light and, you know, it was being watered on a schedule that should have worked. It just wasn't being allowed to dry out basically at all. And that is just gonna kill the plant faster than anything. Okay, so what we're gonna do now then is I'm going to repot the plant that has like the good roots on it, and then the wet sticks I guess will get potted in there too. Maybe something will sprout from it, maybe not, whatever. And then I'm going to put the other cuttings in some soil and maybe chop off some of the other leaves from the plant, depending on how it looks and how healthy they look. So let's repot that plant first. And I actually have a repotting video. If you guys don't know how to repot plants, if you're like complete beginners, it's there. You can go check it out. It's just on my channel. It's one of the last videos that I posted. So I'm going to fill it up with a bit of soil first. And this soil is very wet, so I think I'm not going to water it again for a while still, because the soil is perfectly wet enough and it's not going to need any more water in there. This one's gonna be a bit tougher to repot just because I don't have 5 hands. I'm gonna group them all together actually to kind of just see how I want them to sit, like if I want them, you know, to be super close together or what. And then I'll probably hold them in the pot in that kind of like formation. That way I can get a good idea of what's going on. So the cutting that I actually thought was 3 leaves was actually 1 new leaf and 2 leaves. So I've got another cutting here. While you're doing this too, it's a good idea to like take a look at the leaves to see if there's any bugs or any pests that you might have brought home with your plants, because that's something that you want to take care of right away and not like really keep in your house for very long at all. I usually, if I don't repot my plants, like if they seem perfectly healthy when I bring them home, I usually don't, I don't repot them obviously, but I also keep them quarantined from the rest of my plants. I know that's a word we all know and love to hear these days, but I keep them quarantined now from the rest of my plants, so if they do have any bugs, they don't spread them to the rest of them, because bugs are probably one of my most hated things in the world. So bugs on my plants anyways that I don't like. The wet sticks, I'm gonna just, I don't know what to do with them. I've never really like worked with them, so I'm just gonna stick them in the pot wherever, and then if they grow, they grow. The stems are already kind of yellow, so it seems like those are gonna rot away soon anyways, so it doesn't matter if I pot them in there really deep. I might be doing that completely wrong, but if not, we've got a bunch of roots to work with here, so it's not the end of the world. We'll also see how this potting medium holds up, because when I tell you, it is the weirdest stuff I've ever felt. I mean it. Okay, so I think that's how I'm gonna pot them in, just like a big cluster of leaves. And it should work. I mean, they'll grab onto each other really quick because they were super tangled when I got them, so they'll tangle up really quickly again. Yeah, that should be good. If you wanted to, you could definitely trim down the roots. These ones are perfectly healthy at the end. They're all really good roots, so I'm going to keep them. But if there was like a bit of rot on the roots, I would probably trim them down quite a lot to promote like new, healthier growth and not just like keep the rotted roots in there. Like I said, I'm just repotting it like I basically would repot any of my plants. There's no real science, rhyme, or reason behind anything. Well, like there's a reason behind everything, obviously, but no like particular way that I'm doing it. So there we have it. There is our repotted Moonlight, and I'm gonna of course clean up the leaves and probably chop off like some damaged one, like this one for instance. I'll chop that. I'll probably leave the rest though, because there's not a whole lot to chop and propagate, but I'm definitely gonna take all of the unrooted cuttings that were in there as well as these semi-rooted ones and stick them in some water just so they grow a bit bigger, maybe even sprout some new growth and get a bit healthier. And then when that happens, I'll probably make a new pot of them rather than stick them in their old pot, because this one is just so jam-packed of roots that I just don't want to overwhelm it or overload it. So I would definitely get a cache pot about 1 inch or so out from the nursery pot, just to make sure that there's plenty of room for airflow in there to dry out the soil quick enough to where it doesn't rot the roots. So yeah, I'm just gonna clean him up and put him into his cache pot and hope he does well. If you guys want to see updates on him as well as all my other plants, go ahead and follow me at The Petite Plant on Instagram. And thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it so much. See you later.